Hey everybody, welcome again to Each Channel News. We've got Richard Dean or Rich Dean, Senior Director of Product Management at Syncro MSP. So they have created this modernized MSP solution, PSA, RMM type solution to help MSPs get into the future. And we're going to dig in a few things to figure what's going on because they've really done a great job to integrate with Microsoft. And Rich is a kind of a Microsoft guru, and we're going to pick his brains to figure what's going on. Rich, welcome. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Julian. How are you doing today, sir?
Very,
It's
very
always good to
good,
see
man.
you.
Let's dig into this because everybody's plugged into Microsoft as we know, right? They're the what I'm saying. Um,
The hegemony for sure.
yeah, and but there's a lot of moving parts. So what? Tell me a bit about what's your impression right now with all the stuff you've learned about Microsoft and particularly in their security world, right? What's your take on how Microsoft is playing a role in the security game?
They're probably the market leader in terms of cybersecurity at this point. Compared to someone like CrowdStrike, who's a fast follower. Um, I think what I'm most excited about in that space, particularly in the Microsoft space, it's a few things that they're working on. Um, MCP servers, first and foremost, are probably what has excited me the most. I've been running a lot of lab tests recently to see how we can start to leverage MCP servers. But right out of the box, imagine a small SMB or even a small MSP that doesn't have a lot of expertise in scripting or administration or in particular cybersecurity. I was able to set up an MCP server, connect it to Graph, and then put a local LLM in front of it. And I've been able to essentially ask for any data that I gave it access to get and take any action that I really need to take as an administrator right out of the box with little to no problems. I think that's so powerful and democratizing for, because there's so many, third-party tools out there. There's the entire portal system throughout Microsoft, but being able to, me, myself as an administrator in a small and medium business, set up my own local LLM, plug in an MCP between whatever API I want, and then start asking questions against it. It's a game changer.
Isn't
Um,
it amazing how things are like you can do so much more and it feels like it's getting easier. Like it's one day I guess it's gonna be so easy, we're gonna be we're not gonna sure how much the level one techs are almost at challenge right now because a lot of these things are being baked in to the solution. How far do you think that's gonna go, man?
I think it will be, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Underlying, like the entire system will be driven through AI, agentic AI, or what
Mm.
Microsoft is coining as agentic web now, is really the future. And that's probably the other thing that I'm excited about, and particularly again in the Microsoft space, like their focus on uh, agents in particular, but more importantly, their focus on moving Enter ID into being able to be that single place where they can monitor and track agent identities, non-human identities,
Mhm.
as a central place because it's core. But they're going beyond that too. Like they're working with I think Anthropic and probably Google on an A to A protocol standard, an agent to agent protocol standard, and they're moving OAuth to, authentication, OAuth 2.0. They want to take that to the next generation as well, to where it's dynamic around where it will handle agents because agents need more dynamic permissions. They need to be able to get permissions across different systems at different times, but then be revoked. So there's a lot more to the authentication process for agents, especially across different vendor systems or platforms. So they're really moving ahead with like putting the tools in place. So you can start to adopt agentic AI, but also secure it and monitor it and understand like what you actually have living out there and what it's connecting to. And then the whole industry, Google, Microsoft, everyone is moving towards these standardized protocols. So, I mean, it's going to change how applications are built, how we build business processes. I think it's going to change our marketplaces. I mean, but we're in the first stage of agentic AI, assistant type thing. Soon there'll be, the goal is to be autonomous and then eventually be like a digital worker. So
Man, it's a
it's
great
it's
time
it's
to be
it's it's
alive.
scary and exciting.
It is. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, man, but I just want to, I'm just here witnessing it, and seeing where it goes. And I don't know what's going to happen, but, I know Microsoft, you said that 20% of their software is written already by AI. And then the LLM folks, ChatGPT says, well, wait a minute, man, almost all of our code is being written by AI already. So, I mean, it's kind of like already happening in the back end. And it just seems to me that somebody is like a committee, right, is out there trying to figure, well, wait a minute, man, how much of this are we going to release into the wild? I mean, we got this much. Let's just release this much because that's already a little bit too much. So it's
Mhm.
like, how do we
I,
release this?
I
Because
think I think we're already seeing that.
yeah,
Like, and this is just solely totally subjective, but I've been playing with GPT since the first day it was probably released to the public. And I can tell you like they've throttled that thing over the last 2 years at different periods of time. You can see how they're tuning the response for energy and CPU consumption, like and for economic reasons, because the first iteration of it, like, was way more powerful, quote unquote, than it is today in some senses. Like it really, I don't know. It just feels like it did more at the very beginning because they just turned it on and let it go. And now it has a lot of more finer restrictions and controls in place about responses, how they respond, all of that. So they're already, you know, tuning these or
throttling it
fresh, putting
back.
a threshold, throttling back. That's the
Yeah. You
word.
know what? It's like cars, right? You can push cars much faster than it has right now, but they put limits, especially in racing cars and everything else. Because man, if you unthrottle that, let it open, well, somebody's going to get hurt. So it's a
Oh, no,
challenge, right? But
absolutely. Absolutely.
I
I mean,
I
this is,
saw
I
you
think we
wrote
talked
a.
about,
By the way,
uh,
go ahead.
no, I think that we talked about this last time that maybe we did that on AI. Like, AI is a different technology that needs to be on par with, like, particularly in probably regulation, but on like an architect building a building. Like, it's that type of table stakes that we need to be looking at that industry more than any other technology than we've ever built. I mean, because
Totally,
it's
man.
it, it's that type of risk factor. But I don't th with the speed that we're moving and based on the tech players that are pushing it, and then the international war with AI, or like race to AI. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So,
No, man, I just actually just recently wrote an article about how AI is going to impact the channel, and it's an amalgamation of a whole tons of data and talking to all experts, folks like you, and trying to figure out like, okay, so what does this all mean? Like, how do I translate this into like plain English that mere mortals can understand? And I it took me like 3 days to write this silly article because it went from this big to like that's too much, that's way too much, that's too little, that's too much, and finally I'm probably gonna have to write a series. But anyways, I launched the first one yesterday. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But separate topic, my friend, because it's a topic I think that we all got to digest. How is AI going to impact, of course, everybody's lives and everything else, but for us, how is it going to impact the channel?
mm,
How are they going to work? How the vendor is going to interact? And that's sort of where I'll limit my AI world to just that alone, because that by itself
yeah.
is mind-boggling. Um,
Well,
so
we could
you
talk
wrote
about
an
this for
article, by the way, in
hours.
security, and obviously everybody is trying to figure out how to do cybersecurity better, right? Um, so of all the things that you've learned, like if you had to pick like one or two things that everybody should do right now, is it two-factor? Are we still there yet, or are we going beyond this now?
I mean, I think it it's for sure two-factor authentication, right? 99% of your attacks are be prevented by MFA. We're still not 100% there. We still have hybrid systems that don't have MFA in place, or they don't have some sort of federation in place or single sign-in in place. Um, uh, but I mean, I think MFA is a good place to start, enforcing the general um, thrust against passwords, because passwords are really the weakness. I think there's two parts of that weakness. There's the passwords and there's the humans themselves. Those are the two weaknesses because it runs into phishing really.
Those
Because
darn humans, eh?
yeah,
Can't get rid of
right.
them.
And now we have, again, going back to AI with phishing, it's gotten more sophisticated, it's gotten more localized, it's gotten more regionalized, the language is better, the content is better, email is vulnerable still, your text, your phones are vulnerable for all of that type of phishing. So putting the right controls in place around email and just general phishing controls, making sure your email, your DKIMs are in your place for spoofing, and your SPF records and your DMARC records and DNS are all in place so you can properly exchange email and hopefully authenticate between who's exchanging email to who, but that's still not enough. Even turning off all of the old authentication protocols, that's not enough. Like it comes down, the research really bears this out. It really comes down to the human. We're the weakest link, particularly around phishing and making credentials available and allowing our systems to be taking over to where they can laterally move into wherever they want to laterally move into. So I think training, constant training, understanding to the employees and the users that what is critical, because I mean every single day I keep looking for my phone. Every single day, like I get text messages that are completely, like phishing exercises. Like if I wasn't trained on spotting the signs for that, and there were still, signs to show that, in which will become more ambiguous over time. Um, I would have been compromised a long, long time ago. So they're really focused on the identity space because passwords are cheap. Passwords I can buy, I can crack, I can use password spraying, but even if I don't do any of that, I can go trick people into giving me their passwords, and then I can move from there. So it really comes down to identity, and protecting those identities and passwords, protecting those, getting away from them if you can, but really coming down to the human level. It's about human training, culture, real understanding of the threat, reinforcement, constant reinforcement. Because again, we're the weakest link,
Well,
unfortunately.
man, Rich, I hope the AI doesn't figure that we're the weakest link. They may have a different plan for us.
I
Anyway,
mean, if we could get rid of passwords, but and we could go to totally passwordless type of systems, we'd be way better off. However, we have an entire hybrid environment system in the whole world, and there's no way for us to move away 100% away from those systems that are non-passwordless, that are all based on passwords. So until we can do something with that infrastructure, can we really truly get to a passwordless world? I mean, but there's
10 years
there's steps
maybe,
forward. What's that?
10 years maybe, we'll see. You know,
I don't
so
know. I don't know what the entire infrastructure of on premises has to change, particularly around authentication. So
yeah, it is a big challenge. And of course, hindsight, right? We didn't know what was going to happen, 20, 30 years ago. So we built some stuff that we didn't think hackers were going to be mean. Anyways, one of the things, of course, is trying to protect the administration level accounts, right? And
yeah.
what's your advice on this area? How can these MSPs ensure that they at least protect the admin accounts at the very least?
I mean, right? They should really do the basics. If they're not doing this, and our data kind of shows right now, at least a lot of the data that we crunch, that a lot of customers aren't doing some of these basic things. Um, Things like making sure that your global admins are cloud only, that they're not hybrid, because that makes everything easier for them to move across systems, right? You want to limit how many global admins. At the most, you want to have four, even for the largest enterprises, you only want to have four global admins. And two of those global admins should probably be break glass accounts, meaning emergency accounts that are, don't MFA, have are tokenized. You have the long, massive password hidden in a vault, blocked away, that type of thing. But most importantly, is minimizing their privileges. And if you can get to it, is getting for particular admins that need uh, temporary permissions is to get to some sort of just-in-time system to where you can grant them the permissions they need and then revoke those permissions when they're no longer needed. But at the top is really cloud-only accounts, please, please, please. Limit it to four at the most, two if you're a normal size business, and then making sure you have those emergency accounts just like you would have some sort of emergency key or to your safe, your home safe, or whatever else to get into your home. So that's kind of what,
Yeah.
that's the bare minimum right there. You obviously want to monitor them as well.
Well, you would hope, right? It's and don't share. Please don't share your passwords. And
Well,
I could go we
Well,
could go on and on,
and
right?
don't use those GAs for daily use. You should never,
Yeah.
me, Richard, as admin A, should never be using a GA account to do my daily work. Like,
Well,
but I mean,
sometimes
it still happens, Julian. It still
yeah,
happens. So,
people get a bit lazy, right? And say,
well,
oh, you need access. I'm just gonna lend you mine because I got to go through the whole process and blah blah blah. And then I see how it happens every day. It's really like you said, man. It's a human thing. We get tired, we get frustrated. Do I set up a thing, put more privileges, allow it to expire, or do I just give you a little peek in mine, or share one that I have created separately for others? I think
yeah.
we all know the gig. Um, so let's talk about logging and auditing. I mean, why is that important, man? You're adding a new thing that they have to do. Why?
Um, Yeah, I mean, why is it so important, right? If logging by default should be on in the Microsoft space. Microsoft, I think it was a year, maybe it was a year and a half ago, upped the logging from 90 days to 180 days for free. So every tenant out there can have 180 days of audit logging. I think it's important for two things. At the very least, those small SMBs, if they need to be able to do a search and look at what somebody has been doing or what, sign-ins have occurred, if they're researching some sort of incident from a manual perspective, searching through auditing is going to be key to identify, the traces of it and what actions to take next. But more importantly is around uh, uh, analysis of that auditing, putting some sort of system or third-party tool in place that is looking for anomalies and patterns against that auditing data so that you can hopefully preventively take action to prevent something from happening or at least respond to something that has been occurring. So without that auditing log and that data, we're blind. So it's essential to ensure that auditing is enabled and monitoring is in place for anomalies, but also making sure that different you can turn off types of auditing in mailboxes, making sure those things are turned on, and it's easy to miss some of those things, so you may miss some of that data. But it even goes further, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about e-discovery and DLP, but I mean
So much
that's
when you go down a
at its
rabbit hole.
core, that's why you need logging. You don't know anything You can't figure out anything. There's no traceable log. So
You don't know where you if you don't know where you've been, you can't know where you're going, I guess. So is that you think we're, the Microsoft 365 security, is that how it's going to evolve? Where maybe that's one of the things that's going to kind of look at those logs for you and help you to understand like there's some weird stuff happening here, lock it down. I mean, is that where are we
I,
headed? Where's
I think
Microsoft
that's what,
headed with this?
yeah, I think that's where they are headed, or that's where they've been headed. XDR really kind of starts to a- answer that, particularly around identity threat detection and response, being able to look through that logging, and also the advantage that someone like Microsoft has, particularly in XDR, is not only can they look at that log data and look for anomalous behaviors and patterns, they can look in real time with things like Defender at the actual core level on the device to see where anomalies are happening, and combining those two together into a central place where you can automate around that. Like that's the golden key. Part of the problem though is like there's this breadth of signals, understanding those signals, figuring out what the remediation of those signals are, what is a threat, what isn't a threat, is the hardest part of it, which still requires humans that understand these types of alerts that are coming up in the system, and then having something like a SIM in place or some other types of automation technologies that start to run automated playbooks, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what it's going to come down to. Because the signal, the alert fatigue is real, right?
For
So
sure.
yeah,
We get to one of my pet peeves with Microsoft. It's like we go on an airplane, right? You and I go on an airplane, and we get the seat belts in airplane, right? We get the free food, and some people got no seat belts, and you're you're not gonna get no food for it's like we're figuring out who gets the safety and who doesn't, right? So you get these licenses and you don't get it all, right? You get just like a half a seat belt. You can only get one part of the seat belt. So you're kind of in the plane, but you're not really, you know what I mean? It's like since when safety should be like not included. It's like, man, you go, you get a burger with fries, and no fries, you can't get fries with that burger. At some point, it's it should be included. What's your thoughts about how these solution companies,
ooh,
cybersecurity companies, you pay for certain features, you pay more, you get more features. What's your thoughts on that? Shouldn't we all get it all, man?
oh, sorry, my screen went crazy for a second. Um, yeah, shouldn't we get it all,
That's
man?
Microsoft, by the way,
Man,
chipping in there
yeah,
saying,
exactly.
don't
They
answer that
heard you.
question.
They heard you. They blanked out my screen for a second. Um, Yeah, that is a good question. I think that comes back to the logging, right? To some degree, as a good example. Logging before a major incident that happened at Microsoft that will remain unnamed, but everyone knows, really was the catalyst to ensure. And actually, I believe U.S. Congress partially stepped in and said, "Hey, you have to make at least this amount of logging." To where you were charging for an upsell for that logging, that extra logging capabilities, you have to provide that for as a standard security component.
Yeah,
So we have to push back where it's necessary. If we gave every tool to every organization, they wouldn't be able to utilize them because they don't necessarily have the expertise or time or resources to begin to utilize them. So they would probably sit mostly dormant. So until we can get to a point where adoption is easy enough, like maybe through agentic AI and more automation, to where systems like XDR can be adopted for the SMB much easier. Because I think that's part of the big problem right now is Microsoft is built for the enterprise. So the SMB struggles to really coalesce around building processes and tools and things in place because it's not what they do. They run their business. So that's why they need channel. And even with channel struggles to make sure to have the expertise in place and be able to deal with all the tickets that are coming in, all the alerts that are being surfaced. So being able to have a that preventative space and have all of these controls in space are in place are really, I think if we gave it to everybody, it would remain a lot in dormant at this point. We have to get to
Sad but
more
true.
automation.
Sad
What's
but true.
that?
You're right. I mean, look, you can give an F1 car, right, just coming back from the race there, to anybody, and they're gonna crash it. They won't win a race, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
or drive it at 10 miles an hour because they're like, I mean, I've stepped into cars that I'm totally unqualified to sit in, and like, I'm scared, like I'll kill myself.
well, I just hit it to see what could happen. But look, at the end of the day, right? We do have a channel community that unfortunately they're the ones going to have to figure how to turn these things on. Because for me, vendors can't do it obviously by themselves, right? And maybe AI is going to automate a lot of these things. But it just seems to me like we've got the army, the channel partners, and if
Mhm.
we kind of put our efforts into helping them to figure out how to help all the SMBs and customers out there and to turn these things on that's minimal, right? To protect them,
Yeah,
we have a better chance, right? So we can't leave it up to the end customer, man, to do these things. You know what happens if you leave people to do the right thing. Usually that it doesn't happen, right? But yeah, so I hope we get it at least to a point when the very basics are integrated so we can at least bump it down. I don't know what the percentage would be like, but automatically make sure everybody is two-factor, right? Can you imagine going into your bank without a two-factor?
yeah,
It
yeah.
ain't gonna
No.
happen.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, two-factor is free for everybody, at least in the Microsoft space, but that wasn't always the case as well. So
No,
again, it's about pushback and standards and just the evolution over time, like what becomes out of the box, requirement from a security perspective. So it's just a march forward.
yeah. Well, in our world, we're just you and I are trying to help the channel to solve the problem, and it's a big problem now. As if cybersecurity was not enough, we got the AI issues to deal with. Now we have the end customers empowering their digital transformation with AI. I mean, it's a whole brand new world, and we haven't even gotten into how AI opens the Pandora's box to even more cybersecurity breaches and problems and so on and risks and then of course we talk about AI agents and the AI agents talk to other AI agents and what are they going to do with all these non-human interactions that's what running about 70, 80, 90% of our internet traffic. um, I think we'll be here for a few decades trying to figure this thing out. Rich, you get the last word, my friend. What do you want to wrap this up with? What do you want people to know about? Of course, Syncro MSP as well. And what are you guys are doing to help these guys solve this problem?
I mean, we're really trying to, with our new XMM platform, we're really trying to center the organization around managing Microsoft 365 at its core, right? But we're leveraging things like ticketing, alerting, RMM, all of that professional services, automation, and business process, and really leveraging those components because what we find is that the customers that we service, the channel that we service, they live inside of ticketing. That's where they live day in and day out. They live inside of alerting and notifications, so they have the right information so they can take actions, right? And they really live inside of uh, the identity systems themselves. So managing all of that, bringing that into a central place to help the channel be able to automate and understand the entire assets or set of assets they have, I think is our core mission. We want to simplify everything. We want to help them to secure their entire environments. And we hope that we can help them grow by reducing their tech stack and just making things more efficient overall. So that's our mission. That's our goal. That's the platform's goal. That's what I think about in and out every day, is how to simplify this. And most of all is how do we accelerate this? Because that's the name of the game. How do we accelerate this? Because all these new tools and methods are pushing us in new directions, and we got to start figuring out how to adopt them. So that's my mission.
No doubt, my friend. Look, for me, it's like it's even simpler. I mean, can you imagine the amount of stress, mental stress you're going to reduce on the humans? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've talked to lots of people. Luckily, I don't have to deal with tickets every day, but I've talked to folks who look at this stuff all the time, and I feel kind of sad that their job is just so overwhelming. It's almost like if they don't do it, who's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they make one mistake and boom, right? It's kind of like a no-win situation, because even if you do your best and you prevent 99.99999, right, of the stuff going through, you're only as good as the last one you let through. And just the stress load on the shoulders, and
Yeah.
that these humans are dealing with. I mean, I don't envy their job at all, and that's why they need to be paid more money, my friends, because that's a
Don't we
lot of heavy
all
lifting, and
across the board?
for sure. And what you're doing is kind of helping them, make it a little bit easier as well for them, and it's really critical because they can't do this stuff in the way they've been doing it in the past, right? You've got to bring
I
it under one
mean,
roof, I guess. So
the
keep up the
ecosystem
great
is
work.
is so fragmented, the tech stack is so full at this point that we have to build systems that simplify these things. I think again, part of our mission and part of like what Microsoft is doing and other companies are doing, like Google, is trying to solve the cybersecurity mesh, kind of problem. There's lots of systems, there's lots of signals. We need some sort of AI centered analytics and automation system that is really running those things to where there's little human interaction other than care and maintenance. I mean, so that's really the goal, and I think we're playing a small part in that, with what our channel partners really need and want. So,
Well, man, it's all important. And you know what? Because this is early days, we're trying to build this plane as we fly it, right? And
oh
the
yeah,
reality, this is what we got today. And if we
yep,
don't do what we got today, well, it's going to be worst for everybody. So let's fix what we got today and then move on and do better tomorrow.
that's right.
Rich,
It's good
always a
advice.
pleasure. Um,
Always a pleasure, Julian.
the website, by the way, is syncromsp.com, right?
That is correct, sir. You got it.
There you
Go
go.
check out our new branding. It's great.
Check it out, man. So there you go. So the world's changing, and these tools and stuff being powered by AI is really changing the MSP game as well. So got to keep an eye on where the things are headed because hey, don't want to be left behind. Rich, it's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, bud.